Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Breakfast Television. It's going to be -3 today. It's -10 right now. Lonny Balbi is here to talk to us about... Lonny brought in a ball chain.
For us today.
Yes, just to help us understand how some people have gotten themselves into relationships maybe they don't feel like they should.
I thought we were talking about roasted chicken.
See, that's the difference. That's coming up next.
Okay,
yeah.
Wrong segment.
All right, now this is actually because there was a couple of studies have come out recently that some of them, not all of them, claim that there is a correlation between a tough economy and a lower divorce rate. Accurate, inaccurate, or what's your thought?
In the United States, there has been some recent studies, and because things are a little bit worse there, I think they are here, some lawyers are saying that because of the tough economy, there's less people getting a divorce. And in Calgary, my sense is actually not. I mean, what tends to happen is when things are a little bit tough, when money's tough, people get a divorce, right?
Really?
I mean, they do. Yeah, I mean, because money's often, the root of many of these problems, right? And so we see that a lot. And now Calgary, Calgary seems to be a little bit of a bubble. I mean, things are not as bad here as in other parts, certainly not as bad as in the United States.
Sure.
And even in Canada, it seems to be a little bit better, but we don't notice anything different. In fact, we're busier than ever, but we'll see.
And if things do get tough, do you see that as a trend? Like, let's say February is a rougher month, or March as far as finances for people in Calgary. Will you see more people coming in to talk about divorce?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're seeing now. I mean, we're getting a lot of calls, a lot of people, and it's difficult because when there's not as much money, one of the problems is divorce is expensive, right?
Right.
So that's a problem. The other side of it is what's really interesting. Some people don't think about this, but when it comes to divorce, there's actually when your house is worth less, when the value of your stocks are gone down, that's actually not a bad time strategy-wise to get a divorce for some people. For example, if you're the guy, right, and if there's going to be support being paid, and if your job's in jeopardy, or if you're making less money this year than you were last year, or if you lose your job, this is actually a good time. I mean, I hate to say that, but there's actually some strategy involved there.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, when you say divorce is expensive, like anything, I'm sure it can go from $500 to $10 billion, but what makes divorce expensive?
Well, it's the attitude of the people. Absolutely, because if two people will come to us, and what they'll want to do is they want to get a divorce. One of the first things we suggest is go to mediation, try to work it out. So what we do is we send them out to some third party to try to resolve it. Now, many people do that, okay?
Right.
And, we always hear about sort of the terrible cases where everybody is they're up in arms, and it was sort of a nightmare.
Yeah.
But most of the people get things resolved on their own. And it's not that costly to do that. It really isn't. And so we send them away, they go and do their thing, they come back, we just do up the agreement, and it's all done. So those are people who can get along reasonably well.
Right.
Okay? And not everybody, even people who start out in a very negative way can sit down and work things out. And we try to do that with most people.
And do you encourage them to do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because it will be wickedly expensive otherwise.
Absolutely. And not only is it expensive, but usually if there's kids involved, right, Dave? If you got kids, I mean, when people are divorced, it doesn't mean that they're divorced from, their family. They still have children, and they have to carry on together. So they may not be living together. What we've done is restructured the family by having people living in separate households. But what we're trying to do there is we want to maintain a good relationship between mom and dad, because there's kids. And it's not until people often say, well, once they turn 18, it's over. Well, no. When they get married, when they you want to be able to invite mom and dad,
all
of that stuff. Exactly. Yeah. So it's important that you do a very long-term kind of a study. And look at this kind of thing, and that's why we encourage that when people do get a divorce. It's interesting, like in the United States, there's an article here. This is an American journal. This just arrived yesterday, and here's an article that says the best time to get divorced for the moneyed spouse, the person with the money, is when everything has gone to the devil. That's what the name of the article is. And what they're talking about there is when the economy has melted down, and what they're talking about the devil, they're saying it's gone, everything's gone to crap, essentially, in the economy. And so what they've done is they're saying that's actually a pretty good time to get a divorce for some people. For the person who's going to have to pay support or have to, give up assets, that kind of thing, that's actually a good time to do things. Which is really interesting, right? I mean, it's just a different way of looking at things. But the other side of it is, I got to say that for many people, like in Calgary, your equity in your house has gone down, right?
Yeah.
From last year to this year. And in some cases, some people might have had, maybe last year they had $100,000 of equity. Now they might be at zero. From a year ago, their equity, because the value of the house has gone down, the mortgage has stayed the same, and so there's actually no equity anymore. When last year they thought they had a bunch of money, and people going, gee, is this a good time to divorce or not divorce? In some cases it is, in some cases it isn't. You know, I mean, it depends on which person you're talking about.
Is it safe to say that if I get a divorce, my life will become twice as expensive? If I have kids, for example, is it essentially whatever I had to pay before, if I just say it's like I've suddenly cut my salary in half?
That's a good question. I mean, there's 2 households now as opposed to 1. And there are certain savings in having, you know, obviously an economy of scale. If you have 1 house, everybody living in that house, it tends to be cheaper. Now you've got 2 houses, so there's going to be sort of double costs. But I wouldn't say it's double.
Right.
I mean, there's still some economies of scale. It's not, you don't eat more food,
right,
just because you're living in 2 households, but it is more expensive. So there's no question about that. I mean, it is more expensive. How much? It depends on the family, and quite frankly, again, with the economy the way it is, if people's jobs are, you know, if people are making less money, I mean, you have to cut back. Just like if that family stayed together, if they were still together today, and one of the spouses lost a job or was now working part-time, for example, everybody has to cut back. You just have to do it. I mean, you know, that's the way it is. And similarly, in a divorce situation, yes, the costs go up because there's 2 households, but also you have to rein things in. I mean, you can't be doing the same sorts of vacations, etc., especially if there's a real finite number, if the dollars are very low. If you make gajillions of dollars, it's not a problem.
Tell me in 30 seconds or less, which is impossible to do, but in 30 seconds or less, if you were to say one piece of advice to a couple right now that is going through or getting a divorce,
or thinking about one,
that would make it less painful and less expensive.
Oh, gee, you know, the best thing is you concentrate on your kids and try to keep the conflict down. That's, if I could say one thing, keep the conflict down. You've had Wendy Froberg, Dr. Froberg on this show many times, and she'll tell you that. That's the one thing, as from psychologists, they always tell you, keep the conflict down. If you can keep the conflict down, you can get this thing resolved. It's going to cost you a lot less money. It's going to be better long-term for you and the kids, and it's going to work out just fine. It really is conflict.
That's why you heard it here from Lonny Balbi. Lonny, thanks for coming by.
Good to see you.
Great to have you here.
Happy New Year.
And what's coming up again?
We're going to do something about chicken.
We're going to do some chicken. You watch and see. We have the ideas we have for roasted chicken. You'll be blown away with. Stay with us. We'll be right back.